Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. A former Northwest Territories teacher convicted of sexually assaulting two teenagers was sentenced to 9 years in prison today. The CBC's Tamara Merritt reports.
Neil Barry, a former teacher and basketball coach, showed little reaction when his sentence was read. Barry was convicted in May of sexually assaulting two teenage boys more than a decade ago. Barry was in his 30s when he assaulted the boys. Last week, the Crown prosecutor argued for an 11-year sentence, while Barry's lawyer argued for a 4 or 5-year sentence. The judge said he considered the age and lifelong impact of the assaults on the victims, the deliberate and planned nature of the assaults, and the breach of individual and community trust to determine the sentence. The judge also said he took into account Barry's lack of a criminal record and the impact on Barry's family. The court recommended that Barry serve out his sentence at the Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick. Tamara Merritt, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Friends and family of a Yukon cyclist killed last year while biking to work once again packed a courtroom in Whitehorse today. They listened while the driver was sentenced to 7 years in prison with a 10-year ban on driving. Adam Lougheed pleaded guilty to dangerous driving causing the death of the Whitehorse teacher. Gabrielle Plonka reports.
About 40 people crowded into a courtroom here yesterday for the sentencing hearing of Adam Lougheed. He's the driver who killed Joe Morrison in a hit and run last year on the Alaska Highway while Morrison was biking to work. In a victim impact statement, they described Morrison as adventurous, an eternal optimist, and someone who's missed by many. Some said they've stopped commuting by bike in Whitehorse and fear for friends and family who cycle. Morrison's family said it was important to address Lougheed directly.
For him to be able to see our faces and the faces of all the people he's impacted, and especially us kids. My younger brother and sister weren't here, but I thought it was at least important for him to see one kid.
I wanted the court to understand that there are personal impacts that are felt throughout the community, but that there's also broader consequences to having fewer people use other modes of transportation than vehicles.
Lougheed pleaded guilty to 4 charges earlier this summer, including dangerous driving causing death. Lougheed was seen wiping tears from his eyes during victim impact statements. The Crown is seeking a 7-year sentence. The defense was scheduled to make submissions this morning, but that was delayed while lawyers sort out how much credit for time served Lougheed will get. Gabrielle Plonka, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A correction to a story we ran last night. We reported the driver of a semi-truck in Whitehorse was killed in a collision on the Alaska Highway. In fact, it was a passenger of the truck who died. The driver was taken to the hospital with injuries. Fluctuating water levels linked to maintenance work at the Whitehorse Dam last year ended with hundreds of dead fish. As Julian Green reports, the animals died because they couldn't escape.
At least 760 documented fish were killed when Yukon Energy was forced to lower water levels just too low. I obtained a report that really outlines the scale of the problem via an access to information request. The report suggests this is one of the worst stranding events to happen here, at least in the past 6 years. And on October 8th and 9th of last year, crews were busy removing fish screens, which are used to prevent Chinook salmon from entering one of 4 turbines at the dam up the road here. They were also removing the infrastructure that keeps those screens in place. But in order for the crews to do that work safely, Yukon Energy had to draw down water levels, and to the degree that the water had to be reduced by as high as 1 meter in some areas. And behind me there were patches that were completely drained and dry. The result of this was that hundreds of fish were killed, including 450 sculpin, about 170 Arctic grayling, roughly 130 long-nosed suckers, and at least 1 juvenile Chinook salmon. The document also says, though, that salvage crews were able to save upward of 2,300 fish. Changes now include lowering water levels a bit more gradually. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Elections Canada is apologizing directly to voters in Nunavik after some residents were not able to cast a vote in April's federal election. Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault made the apology in Kuujjuaq on Tuesday. He says he deeply regrets what took place in Nunavik, calling it unacceptable. The agency says bad weather affected flights for workers and they struggled with local recruitment. Perreault says normally Elections Canada engages with ridings before an election to avoid these kinds of issues.
This did not happen here, and both at the local level and headquarters, we failed to capture that and to correct that. And so that at the heart of the problem is a lack of early engagement with the communities. And that led to a series of problems, ultimately some electors not being able to vote.
Elections Canada is preparing a report on what went wrong. That report should be ready by the fall. In the meantime, the agency will hire a new returning officer in Nunavik, and they'll hire local staff moving forward. Prime Minister Mark Carney kicked off the Liberal caucus retreat in Edmonton with a message to Canadians. The road forward won't be easy. Carney also pointed to the need to strengthen the country's economy against Donald Trump's tariffs. Rafi Bujkanyan has more.
There he is. Hey. Addressing his caucus, the Prime Minister made it clear he's aware summer is over and his political honeymoon may be headed the same way if he does not start to get things done.
We have to transform our economy from one that's reliant on a single trading partner, too reliant on that single trading partner, to one that's more resilient, one that's built for Canadian workers and their families on the strong foundation of Canadian industries.
To get there, Carney says he's almost ready to announce the first of the major nation-building projects his government will fund. A list that Radio-Canada has learned, at least for now, will not include oil pipelines. A Liberal source saying that there is no private investor who's willing to build that project. News that's disappointing to the Premier of the province hosting the Liberals this week, but Danielle Smith says she will convince Ottawa to change its mind.
We're in active discussions right now, and I'm very encouraged about where we're heading. But don't think that the list as it appears is the final list. We have been assured that there is pathways to get projects on the list as they become ready to be on the list.
Some Liberal MPs, meanwhile, are saying it's good for the government to take a cautious approach.
We're going to do it the proper way, and we'll see what happens. But right now, and as market analysts have said, there isn't the market case there for a pipeline, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
As I say, we'll see what the fall holds. We have promised to strengthen the industrial carbon price. We've promised to turn Canada into a clean energy superpower. I think we're going to see on the list of national projects a commitment to the transition and a clean transition. We've promised an east-west transmission grid. If we realize all of these and more, then I feel pretty good about the trajectory of our climate efforts.
All of this weighing on Carney as he prepares for a meeting with Alberta's Premier later this evening and a return to Parliament next week. Rafi Bujkanyan, CBC News, Edmonton.
In our broadcast yesterday, CBC incorrectly aired photos of the Kivadluk Inuit Association in our coverage of the death of Bobby Greenlee. The photos should have been of the Ktiemut Inuit Association.
As I looked upon the battlefield in front of me, a German star shell lit up the desolate landscape. I watched as a bullet smashed through the bridge of my nose and left me to the mercy of the darkness. I worried I would be dependent on others for the rest of my life. But Sir Arthur Pearson and the staff of St. Dunstan's had other plans. With their help, I knew I could be self-reliant, and I wanted to bring this idea home to Canada. I wanted Canadians to know that we could hold jobs, that we could contribute, that regardless of sight, all would read, that we, the blind, would shape our own lives, our own destiny.
Blinded by a sniper's bullet in 1915, Edwin A. Baker went on to co-found the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, shaping a path forward for the blind across Canada for generations to come.
The future is everything. Stories of incredible ingenuity, dedication, and some extraordinary teamwork. This is parenthood.
Take a voyage with me to the vast, remote, most extreme place on Earth.
For many, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Where the effects of climate change are intensifying.
The poles are a very rapidly changing place.
And geopolitical cracks threaten peace and stability.
Do you think there's a security concern?
I definitely do.
Experience the historic all-Canadian mission. CBC in Antarctica. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Want to get the most out of CBC News? Use the app or cbcnews.ca for live breaking news on the stories that matter to you. Whether it's local, national, or around the world, turn to CBC News.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single-detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang.
Although the NBA currently is flooded with Canadian players, this was not a reality.
A new immigration law.
This story is directly tied to all of those families who made a brave choice to come to this country.
My favorite word.
Tariff!
How seriously are you taking this threat?
It's the uncertainty that's the biggest issue.
Canada, we got you.
Elbows up!
CBC News has been given a rare look at an important Canadian military exercise here in the north. The goal is to assert Canadian sovereignty in a region other nations have become increasingly interested in. That's because climate change is opening new sea routes and access to valuable mineral deposits. The CBC's David Common watched it all unfold on the board the Navy's HMCS William Hall.
You look and check all the inlets and basically flesh out the small vessels.
On board one of the Canadian Navy's newest vessels, a search has just been launched. The crew, joined by a Coast Guard helicopter, combing these vast Arctic waters for a small vessel that doesn't want to be found. How do you actually proceed now?
So now that we've been tasked for it, we're going to go and take a look and try and find this person.
This is only a practice scenario, but Commander Scott Kellerman makes sure his crew treats it like it's real.
It could be something that could be very challenging to find.
Then we'll be able to go in with our small boats and the RCMP detachment.
This is not some far-fetched scenario. Just this summer, Canada launched surveillance aircraft to monitor the Zhulong 2, a Chinese vessel purportedly for research, but it's also believed to have military application. An independent researcher also tracked a Canadian Coast Guard vessel mirroring that Chinese icebreaker's transit. While last summer it was Canada's Navy shadowing a Chinese vessel.
These research vessels have a wide range of purposes, some of which may not exactly be in Canadian interests.
For instance, another Chinese ship crossed Canada's Northwest Passage in 2017. It would be capable of mapping the sea floor to create maps for future surreptitious travel by Chinese submarines, as well as to identify vast critical mineral reserves in the Arctic.
We have located the VOI. We will be closing it in the next 90 minutes.
Back on board the ship in Nunavut, the suspect vessel has been located, and the Navy moving to intercept, sending 2 RCMP officers. Could they be looking at a sensitive military site? Is it just people we don't know? And so that vessel that's going very fast there now has the RCMP on board, and they're going to go to intercept and possibly arrest those on shore. On arrival, the Mounties approach, meeting a group of Inuit people who are assisting in the simulation. They then proceed to make arrests. In this scenario, the Coast Guard members playing potential spies found with Russian military intelligence ID. David Common, CBC News, Eclipse Sound, Nunavut.
The city of Iqaluit is waiving thousands of dollars in development charges for two nonprofit organizations. Ampere is a nonprofit that was founded in Nunavut. It's trying to build a new, bigger educational center along the road to nowhere. As part of its development permit, it was originally supposed to pay more than $57,000. That amount has now been cut in half. A development charge exemption was also granted to the Ukutak Society. That nonprofit is looking to build a mixed-use residential building. The society was looking at a development charge totaling over $100,000. That charge has now also been cut in half. The Iqaluit City Council voted unanimously in favor of granting the exemptions at a meeting on Tuesday. Newly released data is revealing that many Canadians are continuing to avoid travel to the U.S. The trend started when U.S. President Donald Trump took office, and as Sophia Harris reports, it could continue into the fall.
New data suggests many Canadians are continuing their boycott of U.S. travel. According to Statistics Canada, the number of Canadians returning from visits to the U.S. by land and air plummeted in August, dropping by 25% for air travel and by a whopping 34% for land travel compared with the same time last year. There are many reasons why people aren't traveling to the U.S., such as inflation and the low Canadian dollar. However, August marks the 5th consecutive month of declines, which began when U.S. President Donald Trump took office in January, started a trade war with Canada, and began referring to the country as the 51st state.
This will be indeed the golden age of America.
To express their anger, many Canadians swore off travel to the U.S., and are spending their vacation dollars elsewhere.
Europe is sort of a big hotspot this summer. The Caribbean as well. We've seen a lot of people book trips to Japan. So we're kind of also seeing sort of these different exotic, destinations, Egypt, Jordan, some other places that wouldn't have normally popped up.
Canadians traditionally make up the largest group of international tourists to the U.S., so the decline is hurting regions that rely on their business, like Las Vegas.
We have a rather large market with the Canadians. It's gone from, a faucet to a drip.
The big question now is, will the trend continue?
Only time will tell. It gets really cold here in some parts of Canada, so a lot of people do like to get away to a warmer climate.
The big test will be this fall when Canadian snowbirds decide if they will return to the U.S. Sunbelt or continue the trend of traveling elsewhere. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Ottawa tourism says this season has been one of the best for the capital city. The CBC's Simon Smith finds out whether Canada's strained relationship with the U.S. could be one of the reasons.
The numbers are in. This summer was one of the busiest ever for Ottawa tourism. July and August saw the most visitors to the capital in at least the last 10 years. Hotel demand was up every month this summer compared to last year. So why the boost in traffic? There were some big events drawing people in this summer. Ottawa hosted its first ever Ironman, and who could forget that whirlwind royal visit back in May? People flocked to the capital to catch a glimpse of the King and Queen. And then there's the Ottawa mainstays, from signature music festivals like Blues Fest to sporting events like the Canadian Track and Field Championships. But Ottawa tourism says there's a little more to it than that. They credit some of the boost to a surge in Canadian pride, people choosing to keep their travel and spending here in Canada rather than south of the border. The federal government's Canada Strong Pass gave Canadians discounts to the region's national museums, and Ottawa Tourism launched its own pass, bundling museum visits and other attractions. They say all the national museums in the region saw an increase in visitors. It's too soon to say how much of an impact all this tourism has had on the local economy, but businesses here that rely on visitors from out of town and overseas will be hoping it's not just a one-off, but something to build on for next summer. Simon Smith, CBC News, Ottawa.
Soccer fans now have their first chance to snag tickets for next summer's FIFA World Cup, which Canada is co-hosting. But actually scoring those tickets may prove to be a challenge. Jamie Strachan explains why.
25 plus yards out.
Across the ocean, Canada's men's team is preparing for next summer's World Cup.
Oh, wow! Derek Cornelius! Take a bow, son!
Back in Canada, fans are figuring out how to buy tickets.
I think that this phase is your biggest chance as a fan to get a real face value ticket. This is all that's available at the moment.
Superfan Azaz Sheikh, like all Canadians, will have their first chance to purchase tickets Wednesday. Here's how it works. If you're a Visa card holder, you can enter a draw to buy tickets between September 10th and 19th. About 1 million tickets will be sold as part of this phase, and winners will be notified by September 29th. Then, beginning October 1st, can purchase up to 4 tickets for as many as 10 matches.
We're really lucky because we know Canada will be in certain games, but I think there's 60-something games in that first round. Almost all the rest of them, you don't know who's going to be playing.
Pick the ball inside.
For other Canadians, 2 additional phases will operate in a similar fashion, one from October to December and another after the final draw is decided. Games will be played in stadiums in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Only the dates of the host country's games are known.
Everybody's going to want these, including us.
Right here.
The president of the Voyageurs, Canada Soccer's main supporter group, knows it'll be a tough ticket, even for the most ardent fans.
It's kind of a little bit Hunger Games-ish, where it's everybody for themselves and trying to get these tickets to these games, and they're limited.
Canada Soccer also has a small allotment of tickets for games Canada is playing in, available to Canadian fans through a lottery.
There's much more demand than there will be supply. It's going to introduce a scarcity that I think people really haven't experienced before in Canadian soccer.
FIFA said prices will start at $82 for some group stage tickets and climb to $9,200 for the final. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Many Canadians suffered through multiple heat waves this summer in almost every region of the country. It's part of a global trend made worse by climate change. And new research says much of it wouldn't have happened without the emissions from big oil and gas companies. The CBC's Anand Ram has the details.
Pick a city almost anywhere in the world this summer and chances are people went through a heat wave. Parisians in August, Muscovites in July.
We have 6 coolers behind us right here and they're done by 12 o'clock.
And Canadians weren't spared either. For years, scientists studied the what? Climate change. Now researchers in Europe are calling out and calculating the who.
We have a scientific gap in the link between emitters and the extreme events.
The study took 2 decades of heat waves, analyzing them against 180 major carbon emitters, from the former Soviet Union, China's coal industry, to multinational oil and gas companies like Shell, Chevron, BP, and ExxonMobil. Using the total emissions of those organizations, it showed they've all added to the intensity of heat waves around the world, and concluded that any one of them increased the probability of a heat wave happening at all.
Even if it represents just a little bit of warming, sums up. And when you sum a lot of little contributions, it's become a lot of global warming.
To some experts, this research more firmly connects the dots, from the burning of fossil fuels to climate instability.
They are really detrimental to our livelihoods. And I think by showing this in different ways, using different lines of scientific evidence, that argument gets much easier to make.
But it's the arguments in court that this research may help, potentially turning devastation into financial damages.
Lay out a methodology for doing this. I think that will empower lawyers and citizens who have been hurt by these incidents to realize that they don't have to do the science themselves. They don't have to reinvent the wheel.
With more climate litigation being heard around the world, the study's findings could soon be tested in a case. But for now, it's a small link in a chain of evidence that tries to explain scorching summer days. We reached out to several oil and gas companies. Among those carbon emitters, most didn't respond or declined to comment. Pathways Alliance, representing Canadian oil companies, said it cannot comment without further reviewing the research. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. The weather is changing across the north, and cooler fall temperatures created a fog on the Yukon River in Whitehorse. We leave you tonight with video from the river. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Hi there, Canada. The funny, not so funny thing about the world right now is the thing you maybe didn't see coming.
My favorite word.
Tariff. Minimum 10% tariff on all imports.
We're already hearing about layoffs.
He is trying to break us.
So you have questions.
How should Canadians be preparing for that next trip?
How seriously are you taking this threat?
How is Hamilton bracing for tariff impact?
And while your elbows have been up,
elbows up!
For us, it's the sleeves rolled up. Because you need answers. Our journalists countrywide and all over the world are on the case. Canada, we got you. And we are right there, right beside you, trying to make sense of it with you.